Well, good morning, everyone. Thanks so much for joining us here this morning. Really excited to have you here at Amii headquarters. Excited to be able to have the conversation with everyone and with Evan this morning. Before I begin, I'd like to acknowledge that we're here on Treaty 6 territory. It's a traditional gathering place, travel route, and ultimately place of sharing from many Indigenous peoples, including the Métis, Anishinaabe, Dene, Saulteaux, and Nakota Sioux. And one of the really exciting things about this spot is that it's been this place of sharing and been a place of learning together. And it's one of the things that we're going to be able to do this morning together as a group. We're going to be able to have a chance to hear about what we're doing and where we're going as a country in AI, and really excited to have Minister Evan Solomon, who is Canada's first AI minister, join us for the conversation today. So just before I call Evan up, I'd like to invite Alan to the stage, who's going to be moderating the panel. Alan's the Vice President of Alan's many fans are in the building. Alan's Vice President at the university. I'm really excited to have her moderate the panel here today. Now just to start, I'd like to invite Canada's first AI minister, Minister of Artificial Intelligence and Digital Innovation, Evan Solomon, to give some notes. Thanks.
Can I sit or stand, or how do you want to do it?
Choice, whatever you feel comfortable with.
I feel it's kind of, sitting down might be. Let's sit down after. Carney government, he just ran 28 kilometers, so I feel I got to show that energy. First of all, awesome to be here. Thanks to both of you. Thanks to Amii, Professor Sutton, Rich. Great to see you again, and just to be, with so many brilliant people. I'm going to speak for a couple minutes. When I speak too long, Cam will kick me, and then we'll get into it. Just a couple things. I'll say, first of all, we're going to be super candid. Two, I love feedback and candid feedback. We're a new government. We are less lectures, more results driven. And I really want to hear things non-sugar coated. I'm a new politician, so I'm not interested in the filigrees of, I'm not going to use the term, they keep telling me not to swear, but horse stuff. Like, just talk straight to me. And I will talk straight back. The Prime Minister recognized instantly that we are in a new world. We have a unique moment. We are at a political transformative moment where there's a global realignment and there's a technological explosion going on at the same time. And it is one of these hinge moments in history where there's a lot going on. Gutenberg moment, I've been calling it, but there's lots, you could call it what you want. And there's two sides to it. The opportunity side, frontier research. Amii has been at the forefront of it. This is a core place. We don't say this enough in Canada. I don't know why. I mean, like, Conor McGregor is playing, and we're like, he's the best player in the world. So are you. I mean, I don't know why we don't say, oh, we also have the Conor McGregors of frontier research here. Because Conor McDavid, Conor McGregor, Conor McDavid. And I'm a hockey player too. I coached and I played, and Conor McDavid. It's MMA. I did a lot of talks on MMA.
Ready for a fight.
Yeah, that's right. I married an Irish woman, so now so maybe we'll wrestle. We're the best in this. McDavid's, McGregor's. I don't think we have the McGregor temperament, I hope. But we're the best. And there's lots of opportunity. And part of my job and the Prime Minister's mandate was, think about it as a vertical axis, which is build our AI and quantum stacks from research, frontier research, which we're really good at, to where it starts getting a little fuzzier on commercialization, access to capital, Cam will talk about access to talent, access to capital, VC, and as we build up, so we don't lose our IP, lose our talent, lose our headquarters. And then all the way up, building trust to drive adoption. And how do we do that? Both on the supply side, giving, the governments have given money to support things like Amii, which we're delighted to keep doing, but also on the demand side to be anchor customers. So we're talking a lot about that. You saw the MOU that we did with Cohere to show people that we are going to drive on the demand side too. We need Canadian companies to have customers. Cam will talk about that. And then right up to what does sovereign compute and sovereign cloud mean? Because we need to make sure that Canadians know in this new world that their data and their privacy is safe. So there's lots to do. And then on the horizontal access across healthcare and immigration and every sector, defense, we play a coordinating function on adoption. Working on government transformation. I met with your minister, Nate Glubish, last night. We had a great dinner. I talked to Nate a lot, doing some phenomenal work here. And we're aligned on many, many things. To our ministers, our national caucus is here for this reason, because we're trying to drive adoption across sectors, and we play a role there. So today, I want to do three things. One, first I want to listen, because there's great things we don't know. And what do we need to do better? We get asked a lot about how we can help drive commercialization, how we can help get more talent, how we can make sure that we have access to compute, all those key things. Two, on regulation, what do I mean when I say light, tight, and right? We could talk about that and where and how we want to do that. I'm happy to talk about that. And then three, I want to hear how we can, what Canada AI 2030 needs to look like. How do we build a less reliant and more resilient country? I have said many times, and I believe this, I am a patriot outside of my screw up on McGregor and McDavid, which I will never, ever hear the end of. My son will shoot me for. Insane. I'm going to spend half my life at the rink and I screw up the greatest player in the world. That's the only thing I'm going to think about from this trip, just so you know. But sovereignty doesn't mean solitude. Like, when people say, oh, we got to whole lot, build everything in Canada, we need to keep the talent here, keep the IP here, keep the headquarters, and trade with the world. Because we need to be the best and compete with the best. And that's really how do we do that without losing the best? How do we attract the best? Who's the next Rich Sutton that's coming? And Cam told me that you get a Canadian tuxedo if you come, and my wife's from North Bay, where I think they invented the Canadian tuxedo, so yes. And how do we keep the talent? So I hope we can talk about that, and I'll now hand the mic over. But anyway, I'm looking forward to this, and luckily this is Chatham House rules, so we're never going to mention that hockey screw-up ever again, especially to the Prime Minister.
Someone screwed it up. You just can't say who.
Oh my God, that's so funny.
Chatham House rules, but a few media folks in the room. But
yeah, I'm just kidding.
Minister, thank you so much for being here today. We're absolutely thrilled that you're here. We're so pleased that you've been named Canada's first Minister of Artificial Intelligence and Digital Innovation, and love to hear your passion. We walked around and did a tour just before this, and the questions that you asked, you're deeply, deeply interested. And just before we get into the straight talk, listening to you, it's clear that Canada is at an inflection point when it comes to AI. And I think, what we decide in the coming weeks and months is really going to set the direction that we take for decades to come, right? So what we decide today is going to matter. You referenced the modesty that we have here in Canada, and certainly we have it here in Alberta as well. But we know that Canada has long punched above our weight when it comes to foundational AI research. And institutes like Amii and the University of Alberta have been at the backbone of that success, or are the backbone of that success. So I'd like to start with the role that institutions like Amii play and the University of Alberta. And Cam, I'm going to turn it to you first. You can riff off a bit of what the minister's initial comments were and talk a bit about the role that these institutions play.
Yeah, awesome. Thanks, Alan. And again, thanks so much for joining us here at Amii. I think there's a couple things. You go back, we were talking about this before. I think it's almost 25 years ago that Amii started as the AICML. And that, similar investments were made in Toronto and Montreal, and this long-term, forward-looking, we know we need to lead in research. And we also know that by leading in research, we create, what's arguably the most valuable resource, which is talent out of that. Research is probably the best way to be able to train the best talent in the world. And that's why we see, our alumni all over the world. Pick a major company, it's probably one of our alumni or a Canadian that's actually leading AI at that company. So to have that, continue to be the backbone is absolutely vital for us to do. The other part, just on the academic front, I think we often don't realize is how many incredible undergrads we train. Every one of our profs is also teaching undergrad courses, and we end up training, I think at the university, we're over 1,000 undergrad students that get trained in a core AI course as part of their computer science or their larger university degree. So this kind of writ large creation of talent is to me the backbone of everything. And now the big part is how do we make sure that it's not just we have leaders in every AI company around the world, but we have leading AI companies here in Canada, and that our people are the ones that are helping drive that forward.
Right. Thanks for that, Cam. Minister, would you add anything on the role of the institutes and universities?
First of all, Cam's 100% right. It starts on the foundation with the institutes and the talent. And we are ahead because of our frontier research. And it is, I was just for example, in Waterloo, and you see what they're doing in Waterloo. Waterloo has built a wonderful ecosystem, much like here. They do it around Mila. They do it around Vector with Mars. These hubs really matter, where you have an academic institution that's attracting talent. Then they have a kind of accelerator environment where they can actually take their ideas and start something with it. And then they build around it. And they've got institutions like Amii, Vector, or Mila that then start helping them find the seed and funding and start the commercialization process. But that keeps them here. So it's totally foundational. We've done really well on that. But the world is catching up. And, the thing is, yesterday doesn't matter. Because everyone, to be ahead and to be right is great. But once you're right, all of a sudden you hear the hooves coming and everyone starts and the herd starts galloping towards you. And now you got to get ahead again. And the only way to do that is to keep attracting talent, because there is no other way. One of the things that we get questioned about is what will happen with jobs. And the job question is exactly the same as the research question, which is people can't imagine a future. So they don't know what's coming. Like, what will the company of the future be? What will the job? That's the imagination frontier. The capability frontier starts with the researchers and the academics. And it doesn't push out until the entrepreneurial side, until there. So there's a real deep contact. So first and foremost, we've got to guard that. My challenge is one, and to be here, is to make sure we maintain that. So that is why we proudly are continuing our support for our institutes. That's why the talent strategy to bring more chairs is so important, and we're very committed to that. And this government is deeply committed to that. And there'll be more news on that I'm not allowed to say now, but we will soon, maybe as early as tomorrow. But it's really important. But we can't become the farm system for the rest of the world, okay? I don't want Canada to be the farm team, where we invest in the money, we invest in the talent, we invest in the education, and then as soon as everyone is ready to play and they want more money, they leave and they get picked off. And let me tell you, and I'm just going to tell you one, do I have time for a small anecdote? So And this will be an anecdote without a hallucination about Connor McDavid. My first non-AI hallucination. About 20 years ago, I was hosting a TV show called Future World. So my background, I started a magazine about technology called Shift, and during the internet, or sort of the Canadian Wired. Then I used to host a show called Future World. I know, you're thinking, what a great title. So catchy. Anyway, it was so on the nose, right? The Future World. Anyway, I used to go to Silicon Valley a lot and get to interview all the sort of then cutting edge, and Bill Gates. I would interview Mr. Gates, and one day in February, Gates came to Waterloo. And it was February. At that moment, he was the richest man in the world. And I said to him, Mr. Gates, you have a lot of options in your life. Why are you in Waterloo, Ontario in February? Right? And he said, to his credit, they gave me a free sweatshirt. But he said, I'm going to tell you why. And this is really important for us. He said, I have some of the smartest people in the world working for me in Redmond, Washington. Largest collection of millionaires at the time in the world. Smartest people in the world. And he said, I miss search. Miss Google. Now, remember he was trying to buy Yahoo at the time for $45 billion. And I miss Facebook. Because I missed massive, massive thing. Nobody thought about it in my company. So he said, I realize no matter how smart you are, my best role is to recruit. Because as someone in this audience is either going to start their own company and disrupt mine, work for my competitor and take me down, or work for me. So he said, the most important way to spend my time is talent recruitment. Because he recognized that one young person is going to build a company. So when Bill Gates 20 years ago had a laser on the best Canadian talent, he had a red dot on foreheads to snipe them. Now everybody's doing that. Everybody's looking at graduates here. Everybody's looking at graduates in Canada. Everyone says, oh, Rich Sutton's lab? Every single person around the world is like, I want those ones. I want those PhDs. I want those students. So we can't blow bubbles when they're shooting sniper shots. So we got to keep those people here. And that's why the stage one is support the talent, but stage two is we got to keep the talent. And that's really a challenge, and that's what it's a real core to our mandate, how to do that. And there's lots of reasons, access to capital, lots of things that we can talk about, but so it's more than just the value of the institutes. Without them, we have nothing, but without the follow-on, they're serving the wrong master. They're serving the sniper, and we become the farm team.
Well, I think that's worthy of a round of applause. Well said, Minister.
Sorry, Alan, just before you go to the next question, I want to add one piece to that, because I think, this is part of when we talk about the future of AI and what we need to do in Canada. It should be both worrying, inspiring, a little bit of all of the above, the amount of corporate pick another country that's coming here. And we should be asking the question of why don't we see more Canadian corporates in our institutions? Why are we not seeing more Canadian companies, Canadian investors being the snipers here? And if Bill Gates is coming up to be able to recruit from up here, why are we not seeing that same obsession from our own? In fact, often we'll see people being obsessed with what's going on in the US and be like, okay, well, once we get validation there, then we can do that up here. And I think we need to flip the mentality on it. I know it's something we talk about, like we're gonna talk a little bit about, what do we need to do to lead in Canada? And, it's great that the government is leading, and great that the government wants to continue to push and lead. But I think this should be a challenge to corporate Canada and to the capital in Canada, that many of the best places for investment are here, and it's being invented here. We need to have that same obsession about our own as the rest of the world does.
And I'll just quickly add, and Cam, I totally agree. Yeah, yes. I mean, Cam's doing the work, so he deserves the applause. That one of the reasons why I think the Prime Minister made this position is so we can actually focus on it. So it's not a subset of industry. that it's not the occasional day that we talk about this, that it's every day. Because the economy of the future is built on many, many things. We need lots of infrastructure and lots of things. But this is a core part of the economy of the future. We are a core sector. There's 150,000 people now, but it's the impact on our GDP, our productivity, our efficiency, and across sectors is growing. So I think Cam's right. One of the reasons we don't, because we haven't focused on it. Now we have the spotlight. And the pressure, and rightly so, should be on how are you going to use it and how are we going to, but the first thing is, first order of business, pay attention and let's see the incredible array of talent, opportunity, and the explosion of entrepreneurial energy. I mean, this is, if nothing else, this is the age of the entrepreneur. I mean, AI is giving tools to entrepreneurs that they have never had in their lives, ever. More tools to any entrepreneur, and this is the age of the entrepreneur. And we need to encourage that. I know we haven't talked about the other side and the concerns, which I'm happy to, but on this side of the ledger, you're 100% right. And big companies, it was great, again, to see RBC and Bell adopting Cohere, but Cohere's just one company. There's thousands of great companies.
Yeah. So maybe just building off the notion of the area of focus, in particular with you and the new ministry. Minister, research is part of the story, but in order for AI to thrive, policy conditions for success are required. So maybe if you could just reflect a bit on what you're thinking the role of the federal government is in shaping the right environment.
So there's two sides. There's the regulatory side and the supply-demand side. Let me take the latter and I'll move to the former. On the supply side, we've talked a bit about it. How can the government support programs like the CFAR chairs and our institutes and through our SIF grants, our compute fund, our $300 million compute access fund so we can try to drive more access to small, medium businesses for compute access. I mean, that was we opened up a $300 million program in July and closed it about 4 weeks. It was oversubscribed. It was incredible. The compute demand is deep, wide, and we need to do it. And Cam and I spoke a lot about getting access to compute and try to knock down the barriers to that. And the federal government plays a role there for sure. And for researchers, especially on the research side, building that supercomputer, which is something that our Deputy Minister Mark has been very diligent on. And when you want to say something positive, speak to me, and negative, speak to Mark. No, I'm just. But it's really he's been pioneering great work on that. So on the regulatory side, the budget's coming. We have heard. There's lots of places from angel, seed, Series A, Series B, all the way up the chain that we need to unlock capital. One thing on the first part that I'm a big proponent of, and we'll see if it gets into the budget. But certainly the finance minister is looking for things. We've talked about flow-through shares in our platform. We've talked about investing in capital, tech companies. Canadian tech companies and getting breaks to do that. We've talked about things like quality small business stock, which they have in Silicon Valley, where if you invest, an angel investor has an exit within 5 years, they can roll over and reinvest without a capital gains up to I think for here in Canada, it's up to $1 million, which doesn't do anything, but I think there it's 100 million. So, it really incentivizes a culture of angel investors taking a risk and not being burned by it and then reinvesting in the ecosystem. So that's been a really important flywheel that's connected. I mean, Stanford, that whole ecosystem has been based on angel investors recycling their money back in, and that incentivizes risk capital. Then obviously, look, we have some really great VC funds here, and Cam knows he's and the good thing is, even Nate Glubish, who's a former VC, he knows, so we've got people in government that understand this. Radical Ventures, Jordan Jacobs has done great work. There's a lot, Inovia, there's lots of, but we need more. So we have talked about unlocking capital on the, On the demand side, the government needs to, you'll see more memorandums of understanding. So, companies tell us again and again, they don't want money, they want a contract because they can raise money at larger multiples on a contract. And so the question is, how do we fix our procurement to speed it up, to do the right diligence, to craft a contract where the risk is, look, it's hard to ask the big institutions who are investing pensioners' money, like talk to OMERs. They're like, look, it's, I'll invest, but they got to have 8 to 10, and a VC fund is going to hit 1 in 10. They lose 9, but the 10th one can carry them for a generation because they have equity. So does the government take equity? So there's upside. Equity is directly related to risk. You can't ask pension funds and government to lose 8 or 9 out of 10, and all you're getting back is your loan, right? Like, who would do that? And would you want your pensions investing that kind of risk capital? So the demand side is better, procurement contracts. So that's one way to do it. So we are working very heavily on that, and you'll see more. I think provinces and the federal government procuring from Canada and using that to leverage Canadian companies and to help them out.
Yeah, excellent. Cam, did you want to pick up on that at all?
No, I think the best form of capital is customer revenue. And so anything that can help move the needle on that is really important. And I think, again, just I'll keep maybe harping on corporate Canada a little bit because I think it's great. And the government sending a signal as a purchaser does help, maybe ease some concerns about adoption, by other Canadian companies. So certainly fixing procurement. And I think most startups in Canada are even asking for it to be biased towards them. They're just asking it to not be biased against them. Like, if we can get to that point, we're probably a good spot. And then hopefully, we really start to unlock more investment from corporate Canada as well.
Can I just say one thing? Sorry.
Yep. Okay.
One piece of the puzzle we haven't spoken about, and I think it is transformative, which is our defense industrial strategy. So this is really, what is the biggest change right now that we've probably seen in our lifetimes in the military is the fact that we're about to hit our 2% NATO. The Prime Minister that's $9.3 billion more per year. That's a lot of money for Canadians. Canadians are not used to that level of spending on defense, but they are ready for it, okay? Now, in the United States, which has told a very successful story that they are free market capitalists and that their tech world is built by buccaneers who are pioneers. But the truth is, it is amplified, animated, and supported by their defense industry, full stop. Every tech company gets chits put on the table and investments from DARPA and other agencies as part of their national defense. It's really important to their ecosystem. And their quote-unquote industrial strategy is a defense industrial strategy. And they've been doing it for generations. They don't talk about it like industrial strategy, but that is de facto what it has been. We now, for the first time, are talking about a defense industrial strategy, which means we need to count dual-use technologies, companies that are building technologies that have dual use that help our national defense on. And by the way, national defense is a wide category. And they can count towards dual use that will support our ecosystem. This is a massive opportunity in our tech space. And as this rolls out, I'm also the Minister, for example, of Federal Economic Development for Southern Ontario. So, hard-hit area in manufacturing. But we want to help companies, and this is, the government federally wants to help companies pivot towards our Defense Department and our, what we call the DIS, the Defense Industrial Strategy, so they can pitch and get the procurement for dual use. That is a huge amount of funds that's available. that has never been available to your ecosystem before. And we should start talking about that and educating and concierging towards that. And it's something that Amii and Mila and all the accelerators also have to think about, because there's massive opportunity there.
And I think you're going to hear, Minister, over the next 3 days that you and your caucus are here, that the region is ready to support the work in defense. And you're coming over to the university. I'll put my university hat on for a minute. We have the facilities and the dual-use technologies. So you'll hear that conversation. You'll hear it again out at the airport. So we are lockstep with you, seeing the opportunity here. So I'm going to switch gears, though, if you don't mind, just for a minute. You talked in your opening remarks, Minister, about AI 2030 and the need for us to be less reliant and more resilient. Can you just talk a little bit more about your vision? Where do you see Canada in the next 10 years with respect to AI?
The good thing is, I said 2030, so I said 5 years, not 10 years. So I'm just going to make sure on the math.
Yeah, that's my bad.
I know. First of all, when we say less reliant and more resilient, we can't just be reliant on one customer. But let's just be clear. We want to trade with the United States. We need to trade with the United States. This is a relationship that's vital. So let's not let the politics get in the way of the reality. We're pragmatists, and we want free, fair trade. That's what we want with our closest ally. And, whatever the current headlines are, we are locked in by geography, many of us by family, and our businesses are locked in. So we are having very constructive dialogue with the U.S. I just want you to know that this is not an either or. The U.S. is an important player globally and certainly to us, and we want that to continue. And we're working really hard to make sure the rules of the road allow us to do that. So that's the goal here. We've got 85% of our goods already are trading freely. We've got some key areas that are tricky right now, auto, steel, aluminum, but we're working to resolve those things. And we have a better relationship with the U.S. than any other country in the world right now. Our tariff rate is 5% in the aggregate. The average around the country, around the world, is 16%. Okay, so keep the main thing here. We got a good thing. And despite all the headlines, we still have a good thing. Now, it doesn't mean we don't have to work our butts off to negotiate these key sectors and protect Canadian workers and Canadian sovereignty. And the Prime Minister has said there's been a profound shift. But again, sovereignty doesn't mean solitude. It means strength. Okay? It means resilience. 2, we've got to trade more deeply with allies with shared values. And that in Europe, and you see the Prime Minister driving deeply into Germany, into France, into the UK, into the EU. We need to do that. And we are doing that. I was in Paris at Vivatech, and we had 250 companies there. And we're working hard to do deals with those governments and to make sure our companies have access to those markets. In the UK, you saw the Prime Minister doing that, specifically around things like AI and quantum, which were really, really important, and Germany. 3, we need to access capital in other regions, in the Middle East as well, in Southeast Asia. We have our eyes open, but we need to trade and give access more quickly to our companies to trade. So we start with a couple goals ahead. I risk another hockey analogy. Because we have more free trade agreements than almost any other country in the world. So that's good. 3, we have an asset right now. The world also recognizes that there's a political realignment. Canada's opportunity is, if you're an investor and you're long on one customer, you got to start hedging. And everybody's been long on one customer. And they need to hedge. And that's why this is the best place to hedge. People want safe, play by the rules of the road, Handshake means business, laws back it up, consistent, great university talent, great access to workforce, great access to healthcare, great place to have a family. Building data centers here makes sense. We have energy, we have cool climate, we have educated population, we've got rules of the road globally, and we got a lot of global trade relationships. All those things are in our favor. We just got to play the cards right.
Yeah, that's great. And as I think about sort of what is our competitive advantage, I think you've named a lot of them. And you look around the world, places like France, Singapore, that are doubling down on their national strategies for AI and their investments. Certainly we can't compete with the US and China on their investments in AI. So we are going to need to rely on these other competitive advantages. So maybe over to you, Cam. Do you have some thoughts on some of these areas that as Minister Solomon's thinking through policy changes that we should be considering?
Yeah, I don't think we can compete dollar for dollar with other places in the world, but I think we can be much better aligned now on, the areas that we're investing in. We have some great key strategic areas. When we kind of set out with some of this, the chair recruitment at the university, one of the things we sat down was saying like, okay, well, what other things are we experts in? Are we the best in the world at? You look at Mike Houghton and him winning a Nobel Prize. So you're like best in the world at virology and best in the world at AI. Can we have something that's at the intersection of the two? And it's kind of like nobody in the world can compete with it. So that type of thing where we don't have to maybe throw as many dollars, but if we're more intentional and aligned with the dollars that we are spending, we're aligning our tax policy around startup investment, where we're investing our venture dollars, we're investing our talent, these types of things. I think we're going to be putting ourselves in a great spot. I think overall when you look at like 2030, beyond, I think the next 10 Googles are going to get created in the next 10 years. That's the kind of change of the landscape that's happening right now. And maybe not all 10 will be in Canada, but when you look at what we're creating, we have the ability to be able to create, half of them. And
why not think we can?
Yeah.
Why not
think
we can?
And we need to believe that. I know we talked about this, before, where, it's kind of ridiculous to think that Canada's going to lead at the Olympics. But we decided we were going to own the podium in Vancouver, and we owned the podium. We decided as a country we're going to invest and do this, and we were going to all get behind it, and we did that, and we weren't apologetic about it. And I think we need to do the same thing in AI and say, we're going to own the podium in AI. We're going to get behind this. Doesn't mean we're going to win every gold medal, but we're going to win enough to be the best place in the world for it. And I do like the part that I don't think isolation is the right thing, because I do think the best places in the world are the ones that are most connected into the rest of the world. But I think this part where we're more self-reliant than reliant on every other place in order for us to be successful is going to be really vital for us.
And you said by 2030, what should we have? We should have sovereign cloud capability for all our provinces and our federal government, right? We should. We have to. We need sovereign cloud. Citizens will demand it. Researchers will demand it. Healthcare will demand it, right? Governments will demand it. So sovereign cloud is really important. We just have to have it. We're going to need some sovereign compute. So we are very busy calculating what our Canadian sovereign compute needs are, our federal government, and our provincial government. So we're working really hard on that, and we have to make sure that we have that compute need. Then what are our goals? On a second order business, we get much more specific. Do we have an exaflop goal? Do we have how specific do we need to get? 3, trust on the regs. You asked about the regs. I've said very publicly we're not going to reintroduce C27, which was the 3-part, on privacy and then the AI idea. But we are very keen. We had a lot of agreement on the privacy side, a lot of agreement on the data side. And then we have targeted areas that people want. An umbrella regulatory environment somewhere between the no regs of the US and China, because it's a constraint on innovation and national security, and the European model, which maybe even they are concerned that it's a constraint on innovation. Canada can't be alone and just find some super sweet spot, because you don't want to lead a parade that no one's behind. But you do want to be targeted. Canadians will want action on deep fakes. Consumers will want action on that. People do want to make sure their kids are safe. I got 2 kids. Well, now they're older. They want action on that. So we got to be, and we are deciding on what part of that legislation on protecting privacy, protecting data, and that's going to has to come way before 2030. But by 2030, you should have sovereign cloud, sovereign data centers, capabilities. You should have access to compute that's not a constraint on your frontier research. You should have regulations that make Canadians feel safe so they can start adopting and using, and recognizing that these are tools that they need to serve them better. That's the vision that we've got, and that's got to happen. This is not like this is our policy. This is not a political vision. This is the only pragmatic possibility on this. If we don't do it, it's not a left, right, up, down. It's are you going to be ahead or behind? That's the answer here. So I don't think of this as political at all. I think of this as practical.
Absolutely agree with you. And certainly we have a room full of all of our partners today, and I think that we are all on the same page, that this is a movement that we all have a collective responsibility to move forward. We've covered a lot of ground today, and I know, Minister, you've got a very, very full day, so we're going to wrap up. But I'd like to, if you could, sort of leave the audience with one lasting thought that they can take back to their respective stakeholders.
Sure. Okay, so we don't even do questions. This is...
We're making it easy today.
You don't want one question? We're open. Does anyone have a Rich Sutton?
Oh, Rich, God. We have to.
I actually didn't really want a question. I just wanted Rich to say something because it would be great. But do we have a mic for Rich?
Okay, immigration. We want to have talent. We attract people from all over the world.
That's all the time we've got, Rich.
My students graduate, and all of those that are from other countries, they have a struggle with Canada to stay here. And it's 2025, and it's still true. Yeah, my students.
So Rich has raised a great point on talent immigration. I've raised it. We are keenly aware of it. Cam and I had a really long conversation about it. Tier 1 issue for me and our government. We hear this literally every single place we go. And I can tell you that there is a hard push inside to make some very quick changes. And as the minister here, I'm carrying that message very loudly. And I hear it a lot. And and you're pushing against an open door here. These are complicated. I guess you run it as a new politician. I'm running into the politics of all this. But the truth is, it matters greatly. The talent visas, the keeping people and getting their PR, there's a lot of issues here that we hear about. I'm glad you raised it. I will say, any strategy that doesn't include that, is really tough to be effective. That core ingredient in my view. So I'm glad you raised it. I totally agree with it.
Thanks, Minister. I do think we should probably let you go if that's all right. But just thank you again for being here today, and thank you to you, Cam. I do think there might be a McDavid jersey in your future on your next visit.
I coach so much hockey. Probably why my son never made the NHL. That is going to haunt me. Oh my God. Anyway,
sorry.
Thank you.
Okay, a round of applause for our panelists. Thank you.